Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of Christianity's most sacred rituals, the Eucharist. And you might be surprised to learn that its original blueprint, well, it isn't found in a church at all, but at a very, very old Jewish dinner table.
So, let's start with a bit of a mystery. We all know the story of the Last Supper, right? But have you ever stopped to wonder what the prayers of the very first Christians actually sounded like? It turns out the answer is way more fascinating than you might think.
See, our journey to find the origins of the Eucharistic prayer is actually going to take us back thousands of years. We're heading to an ancient Jewish tradition, one that could turn a simple family meal into a really profound act of worship.
Okay, so these words, "Do this in memory of me," they're the absolute core of the Eucharist, right? They're the words of institution. But here's the thing. The prayer structure that's built around these words, it tells a much, much deeper story. And it's not a story about a radical break from the past, but one of, believe it or not, incredible continuity.
All right, Section 1, Prayers at the Jewish Table. And the subtitle says it all, more than just saying grace. Let's dive in.
So, the key player here is something called the Birkat Hamazon. And no, this is not just your simple thank you for the food. Think of it as a kind of spiritual architecture, a structured prayer that does something absolutely incredible. It connects the very physical act of eating to the entire sweeping story of God's relationship with His people.
Now, to really get why this is so important, we have to talk about a huge turning point in history, the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 AD. I mean, this was a massive deal. With the central place of sacrifice just gone, the home and specifically the family dinner table became the new altar. And that completely elevated these mealtime prayers, making them a central pillar of Jewish spiritual life.
So take a look at this. This is the ancient text of that very prayer, and it's been preserved for centuries. Now, you don't have to be able to read the Hebrew here. What's absolutely crucial is its structure. This ancient blueprint, this recipe, it's the key to this whole thing.
Okay, so here's that blueprint I was talking about. It follows this really clear three-part pattern. First, you give thanks for nourishment, the food that sustains the whole world. Then you move to the specific. Thanks for the land and the covenant for the Torah. And finally, you look to the future with a prayer for Jerusalem and its restoration. So think of it this way: thanksgiving, revelation, and petition. Got it? That three-part pattern is everything.
All right, Section 2, the first Christian echoes, and our subtitle, Discovering the Missing Link. So keeping that three-part structure, thanksgiving, revelation, petition, firmly in your mind, let's see how it starts to echo in the earliest Christian practices. How on earth did this ancient Jewish prayer find its way into a brand new faith? Well, the key, the missing link really, is a document called the Didache. This thing is amazing. It's basically a Christian manual from the first century. Think of it like a liturgical time capsule, giving us this incredibly rare glimpse into what the worship of the very first generation of Christians actually looked and sounded like.
Okay, now check this out. This is where it gets really good. When we put the structure of the Jewish Birkat Hamazon right next to the Eucharist prayer and the Christian Didache, the parallels are just undeniable. It is the exact same three-part blueprint. The Jewish blessing for nourishment gets reinterpreted as thanks for spiritual food and drink. The blessing for the land and covenant becomes thanks for the life and knowledge revealed through Jesus. And that prayer for Jerusalem? It becomes a prayer to gather the church into the kingdom. It's a perfect match.
And this quote from the Didache just nails the connection. Listen to this. Remember, Lord, your church. Gather it from the four winds into your kingdom. That's a direct echo of the Jewish prayer asking God to gather the scattered people of Israel back to their land. It's the same hope, the same longing for community, just recontextualized for this new group of believers.
Okay, on to Section 3, New Prayers from Old and how the recipe evolved. Because the story definitely doesn't stop there. This foundational recipe, this three-part structure from the Jewish meal, was just the beginning. It was about to be combined with some other really powerful elements.
Yeah, think of it like this. The meal prayer was the original, ancient base of our recipe. But then, as the Eucharist started to move from a simple meal in someone's home to a more formal community gathering, early Christians began adding some new, powerful ingredients. And where did they get them? From another place of worship they knew very well, the synagogue.
And these new ingredients from the synagogue were a big deal. We're talking about things like cosmic praise, praising God for all of creation.
and the Sanctus, that's the holy, holy, holy you might know, joining the angelic choir. Plus specific prayers or intercessions for the community, both the living and the dead. These things just blew the prayer wide open. Suddenly it wasn't just about the meal anymore. It became this cosmic prayer, connecting the worshipers on earth with the angels up in heaven.
Now, this blending of the meal prayer and the synagogue prayer, it didn't happen the same way everywhere. It actually led to different families or schools of the Eucharistic prayer, which is formally called the anaphora. So, for example, you have the Antiochene school, which really held on to that clear, three-part structure from the meal blessing. But then you have the Alexandrian and Roman schools, which created more of a blend, where the synagogue elements really started to dominate the structure.
Just to give you a concrete example, take a look at this. This is a hugely influential prayer from a guy named Hippolytus of Rome, writing in the early 3rd century. You can already see a much more complex form emerging here. It's weaving together that cosmic praise, the Last Supper story, and a prayer for the Holy Spirit. And this specific form, wow, it would go on to influence liturgies all across the Western world for centuries.
Okay, final section, a shared heritage. And the subtitle here is key, continuity, not invention. So after all this, after our journey back in time, what does it all mean? What's the big takeaway here?
Well, it's this. The Christian Eucharist was not created in a vacuum. It is a direct descendant of ancient Jewish prayer. This isn't a story of some radical invention, where Christianity just threw out everything that came before it. No, it's a story of profound continuity and reinterpretation. And that matters. It matters because it shows us that the earliest Christians used the spiritual tools they already had, adapting the sacred prayers of their ancestors to express the new faith.
I mean, look, we can trace a clear, unbroken line of descent. It starts with a family meal in ancient Judea with the Birkat Hamazon. Then it gets adapted by the first Judeo-Christians in the Didache. Later, those synagogue prayers get blended in, creating the great anaphoras. And that brings us all the way to today, where liturgies all around the world still carry the structural DNA of that very first Jewish table blessing. It's still there if you just know where to look for it.
So what we're looking at is a powerful story of a living, breathing tradition, something that's been carefully reinterpreted and passed down through countless generations. And really, what it reveals is this incredibly deep, shared spiritual heritage. It's a bond of prayer that connects two of the world's great faiths, and it shows us how new beginnings are so often built upon these ancient, sacred foundations.
And so, that really leaves us with a final question to chew on. How does seeing this shared foundation change our understanding of these living, breathing traditions today? Recognizing this shared root doesn't diminish either tradition one bit. If anything, it enriches our understanding of both of them. It's just a powerful reminder that to really get a handle on the present, you often have to go back and uncover the secrets of the past.